It begins not with a scream or a shadow, but with paperwork. In the summer of 2022, nearly 2 years after Joel Schumacher's death, the new owner of his former Hollywood Hills home opened an email from the utility company. The subject line was plain, "Usage anomaly detected." The bill showed a 41% spike in electricity consumption compared to the previous 3 months. The odd part? The house had been dark renovations halted. No one staying there. Thermostats set to vacation mode. The owner called the company, certain it was an error, but the smart meter readings confirmed it. Something was pulling power inside a supposedly vacant property. To be sure, he went to the house that evening. The hillside road was still, lined with eucalyptus and the occasional street lamp, the kind of neighborhood where a raccoon or a coyote was more likely than a passing car. He parked by the sloping driveway and walked inside. The air smelled of dust and paint, like a paused construction site. Then he noticed it, a wardrobe box, flattened, pressed up against the inside of the front door. He swore he hadn't left it there. A week earlier it had been in the guest bedroom with the rest of the renovation debris. The box was marked in faded Sharpie wardrobe number 4. The house's smart doorbell camera had not recorded anyone entering. But when the owner checked a small audio recorder he'd left on a console table by the entry, he heard something unsettling. At 0:59 on June 21st, the device had captured 3 sharp knocks, followed by the unmistakable scrape of cardboard sliding across hardwood. No one appeared on camera. No door opened. But something had shifted inside the house. That was the first hour of evidence: an unexplained bill, a recorder with knocks, and a box that seemed to move on its own. It was also the beginning of our investigation into what might still linger in Joel Schumacher's former home. When investigators first stepped inside Joel Schumacher's former Hollywood Hills residence after the strange knocks and electricity anomaly, the place gave off the air of both neglect and preservation. Dust lay thick in some corners, yet the main living areas looked frozen, as if waiting for work to resume. The architecture was typical of its hillside-era split-level, glass panels, and long corridors that seemed to echo even the smallest sound. The living room, perched above the slope, still open to a cantilevered deck, its railing catching faint moonlight. But the eye was drawn back to the entry. The wardrobe box still leaned against the inside of the door like a mute witness. The blueprint discovery. In the West Hall closet, tucked above the lintel, a folded sheet was found, a blueprint copy of the entry level. It was dog-eared and annotated, the kind of working copy a contractor would carry. Along the margin, in a shaky blue pen, one note stood out: "Chime transformer moved 2003. Another read: "West closet, do not remove panel without support." These notes didn't match the handwriting of the current owner. Nor did they line up neatly with city permits, which only showed a lighting adjustment from 2007. The implication was that something had been altered quietly, off-record. Electrical oddities. The breaker panel was the next point of attention. 2 circuits, Hall/MEZZ, and entry, were drawing far more than expected. Both should have been idle, yet the smart meter showed activity. The entryway itself was dark, with no working fixture and a door chime plate long since removed. A handheld tester chirped at the empty wall plate, even when the panel was switched off. The electrician later confirmed this could be ghost voltage from residual capacitance in long wire runs, but the timing was suspicious. Why had the spike in consumption matched the week when unexplained knocks and scrapes were recorded? Neighbor observations. Neighbors offered fragmented memories. One, living downhill, recalled seeing a low light moving near the stairs window around midnight. She thought it was a phone glow, the kind of shifting rectangle you notice at a distance. Another dismissed it as raccoons, noting how they clattered bins and could mimic footsteps. He added that coyotes used the side steps, their nails striking would like deliberate taps. These explanations were rational, even comforting. Yet they didn't account for the interior audio. 3 human-like knocks, followed by the drag of a box. A strange consistency. When investigators tried to replicate the sound, they found the closest match came not from the front door, but from knocking on the crawlspace panel inside the west closet. The same hollow resonance, the same short decay. As for the scraping noise, Dragging the wardrobe box along the hardwood produced an almost identical waveform to what had been captured at 0:59. This suggested something simple, that the box had been moved and the panel struck. But by whom and how when the door logs showed no entry? The lingering unease. The team laid down chalk dust across thresholds, a trick to reveal animal tracks or human intrusion. They set recorders on both floors. That night, with the power shut off completely, the house seemed inert. But at 2:24, both devices captured a sharp clap, crisp, clean, like a film slate closing. No lights flickered. No circuits drew current. 7 seconds later, only on the mezzanine recorder, a faint exhale was caught, breathy, human in tone. The wardrobe box shifted another inch closer to the door by morning. The chalk remained undisturbed. The following week, the investigative team returned to Schumacher's former home with a different plan. If the first night had been about observation, the second would be about control, turning off power, sealing entry points, and leaving instruments in place to monitor what could not be seen. Preparing the house. They began in the late afternoon, walking the narrow hallways again, sketching their own floor plan notes against the dog-eared blueprint found in the closet. Every door and window was checked. Deadbolts thrown, latches confirmed, sliding doors wedged with dowels. The wardrobe box, still near the entry, was marked discreetly with tape to track movement. The electrical panel was shut down fully. The owner signed off on cutting power to the main, which meant the smart meter would freeze and the only devices active in the house would be battery-powered recorders. For were placed: console table recorder, same spot as before, near the entry. Mezzanine recorder, angled toward the railing, overlooking the living room. West hall recorder, close to the crawlspace panel, where the blueprint note warned, "Do not remove." Exterior recorder, set discreetly on the back deck to rule out wildlife sounds. The house fell into true silence once the main was off. No humming refrigerators, no residual clicks of thermostats, just the open stillness of concrete and wood. First hours of monitoring. The first few hours were uneventful. Outside, a faint wind came up the canyon, rustling eucalyptus leaves and striking the exterior microphone with low, predictable rhythms. Inside, the rooms remained still. Even footsteps were absorbed into soft echoes, as if the structure held sound longer than it should. At 11:43 p.m., the console recorder caught a short sound. 3 faint taps, spaced evenly, like knuckles brushing wood. But when investigators tried to replicate it by knocking gently on the entry door, the timbre was too dull. The recorded sound had a hollow resonance, closer to what the crawlspace panel produced when struck. Yet the chalk line they had laid across that panel remained undisturbed. At 12:58 a.m., the mezzanine recorder picked up what sounded like a dragging shuffle, cardboard scraping again, short but distinct. The wardrobe box, however, had not shifted against its tape markers. The noise seemed to come from a direction closer to the living room floor, not the entry. The 2:24 clap. Then came the most notable moment. At 2:24 a.m., every recorder inside caught the same sharp clap, so clean it resembled a film slate. The waveform was nearly identical across devices, but strongest upstairs, suggesting the source was between mezzanine and entry. 7 seconds later, on the mezzanine recorder only, there was the faintest breath sound. Not wind, not an animal rustle. A controlled exhale, steady, as though someone had let out air deliberately. Outside, the deck recorder caught nothing unusual. No coyotes, no bins moved by raccoons, no wind strong enough to rattle the glass doors. Rational checks. The following morning, the team set about testing possibilities. Thermal pops. They struck wood beams and waited for settling noises, but none matched the clarity of the 2:24 clap. Cardboard movement. The wardrobe box was nudged on the hardwood. It produced a scrape nearly identical to the 0:58 sound, but remained unmoved overnight according to tape markers. Residual voltage. The wall plate near the old chime still registered ghost voltage with a handheld tester, even with the main off. The electrician insisted this was possible due to capacitance, but admitted it shouldn't be this strong. The house itself remained locked, chalk lines intact, every recorder accounted for. No signs of human intrusion. The growing unease. What began as an investigation into electrical quirks and wildlife possibilities now carried an uncomfortable weight. The blueprint's handwritten note about a chime transformer moved 2003 seemed more pressing. Had wires been rerouted improperly into hidden junctions? Could electrical discharges account for sharp, sudden sounds that resembled handclaps? Or was something else happening, something that repeated itself with deliberate timing? By the end of the second night, nothing had been proven beyond doubt. Yet the team walked away uneasy, with the sense that the house was performing, as if rehearsing old rhythms in the absence of its longtime occupant. By the time the team entered its third phase of investigation, the case had shifted from simple troubleshooting into something that felt more personal, less about circuitry, and more about the history baked into the structure of the house itself. The silence inside those walls wasn't empty. It felt weighted, as though carrying the residue of long years lived late at night. Neighbors, when asked again, started offering richer, more layered memories. One woman who had lived nearby since the 1990s remembered Joel Schumacher as the man of late hours. She said that while others on the ridge closed curtains and went to bed, Schumacher's house often glowed with slivers of light past 2 a.m. You'd hear voices, never shouting, just directing, she said. Someone calling again, or saying, "Hold that." It sounded like rehearsals. Even when the house was empty after he passed, I swear those hours still feel charged. Another neighbor mentioned something stranger. That from her driveway across the street, she sometimes caught what looked like a faint flash against the mezzanine railing, like someone holding up a mirror to reflect passing car lights. But there wasn't anyone there, she insisted. I thought maybe a bird had flown past glass, but it was at night. Inside, the team grew increasingly focused on the west closet and the crawlspace panel. It seemed almost to anchor every unexplained occurrence. The knocks resonated most clearly there. The blueprint note, "Do not remove panel without support," pointed at hidden work behind it. Chalk lines remained unbroken, yet the sounds originated just beyond it. When they laid their ears close, even in daylight, the panel carried a hollow ring, like there was more than just earth and pipe beyond. The mezzanine, too, played its role. That breathy exhale captured after the 2:24 clap had been faint but unmistakable. When the team replayed it in the house, standing at the same spot, the sound felt eerily as though it belonged exactly where they stood between the mezzanine rail and the entryway below. There were still reasonable explanations. One consultant suggested that the sound of a clap could be a release of pressure in a sealed pipe, or even a sudden shift of wood beams in cool night air. The exhale, he said, might have been microphone handling noise or a brief gust through vents. Yet those who had been there that night disagreed. The microphones had been fixed, untouched, and the HVAC system was off with the main breaker killed. No vents moved air. The idea that both recorders captured the clap simultaneously with such precision gnawed at them. The wardrobe box remained the most tangible piece of evidence. Its scrape could be reproduced, yes, but its slow progression across the hardwood inch by inch, from closet to door, still lacked a complete explanation. Humidity warping the floorboards might have shifted it. A slight tilt in the house's foundation could have nudged it forward. But why only at night, and why coinciding with the very moments that microphones caught claps, taps, and exhales? What everyone agreed on was the atmosphere once darkness settled. Even with the panel off and the rooms sealed, the house felt active. The mezzanine, in particular, had the sensation of being a balcony overlooking a stage. The living room floor below seemed expectant, as if waiting for cues. Each time someone descended the narrow stairs, they felt eyes on them from above, though only silence and mirrors met them. By the third night of watching, one investigator finally admitted aloud what others had only implied. This doesn't feel like a haunted house. It feels like a rehearsal space that won't stop rehearsing. The days stretched into weeks, and with each new test, the line between explainable fault and unresolved anomaly blurred. The team had data. Electricity spikes, clear audio of knocks and claps, the steady scrape of the wardrobe box, the faint exhale at 2:24 a.m. What they didn't have was closure. The house began to feel patterned, almost rhythmic. Each night, the same intervals returned movement or sound close to midnight, then silence, followed by an event around 2 in the morning. This timing became uncanny when matched against old neighbor testimonies. He worked late. Lights were always on until 2 or 3. The space itself seemed to echo its former owner's habits. Investigators described it not as haunted in the sensational sense, but as a structure replaying its own history, like grooves in a record. The mezzanine felt like a control booth, the living room a stage. Standing there, listening for the next unexplained sound, one investigator whispered that it felt like waiting for direction to be called, like someone's about to say, "Action." Attention kept circling back to the crawlspace. The panel in the West Hall closet had become the house's silent focal point. The warning written on the blueprint, "Do not remove panel without support," was unnerving. What support? What had been hidden, shored up, or left unfinished? When the team tapped it, the hollow tone rang sharper than surrounding walls. It wasn't just drywall. It sounded like there was a void behind, perhaps an extension or sealed cavity. Yet the panel screws had been painted over, as if deliberately fixed in place. The owner hesitated to authorize removal. Until a structural engineer confirmed what was back there, it remained closed, a mute witness that might hold answers or nothing at all. Every anomaly was put under a lens. The clap could be thermal contraction. But why so exact, so sudden, and caught on multiple devices simultaneously? The exhale might be microphone artifact. Yet how to explain its human-like rhythm and timing 7 seconds after the clap, only on the mezzanine recorder? The box might have shifted from humidity. Still, its tape markers suggested movement too consistent, always toward the entry, never random. The team couldn't prove anything supernatural, but the rational explanations began to feel stretched, patched together like loose tape over a reel of film. More than once, standing inside those dim corridors, the investigators admitted to an unnerving sense that they weren't alone, not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle, persistent way, as though the house itself expected interaction. Every creak felt amplified, every sigh of wind sharpened. Even without evidence, the feeling of presence was undeniable. And through all of it, the blueprint loomed, a fragile sheet of folded paper, annotated by an unknown hand, hinting at changes and secrets behind walls. Its ink notes were practical, but the penciled scrawl box here, pointing toward the very wall where the wardrobe box kept moving, hung over the investigation like a question mark. The team had not yet decided how to proceed, whether to pry open the crawlspace, to call in another electrician, or to simply stop returning. What they agreed on was this: the house carried a rhythm of its own, a rhythm shaped by late nights and rehearsals long past. By the fourth and final visit to Joel Schumacher's former Hollywood Hills home, the investigation had gathered more data than expected, but no absolute clarity. The house, with its angled corridors and glass panes overlooking the slope, had revealed itself as both a structure full of rational quirks and a place where memory seemed to take on a physical shape. The crawlspace panel in the West Hall was finally opened under the supervision of a licensed structural engineer. Behind it lay not an expansive void, but a cramped wedge of space laced with old conduit and insulation. Nothing dramatic, no hidden room, no stash of equipment, but the wiring was messy, patched across decades, with signs of amateur adjustments. A corroded junction box sat wedged against a beam, its cover loose. That discovery explained part of the mystery. The electricity spike could be traced to a fan that had been left running on one mislabeled circuit. The ghost voltage at the chime plate aligned with the strange wiring behind the crawlspace. The crack-like clap might have been a wooden beam popping from thermal stress, amplified by the hollow space. Yet, even with technical answers, the emotional core of the case remained unsettled. The breathy exhale captured only on the mezzanine recorder after the 224 clap remained unexplained. No venting system was active, no one was present, and the sound was human in its cadence. Audio specialists compared it to microphone wind noise, but the shape of the waveform aligned more with a deliberate breath. Equally persistent was the wardrobe box. Though investigators tested slopes and humidity warping, its steady progression toward the entry door happened in ways that didn't align neatly with environmental drift. The tape markers told the story. Each morning, the box was closer to the front door than before, inch by inch, until it finally came to rest pressed flush against the jamb. Neighbors who had watched from a distance for years repeated the same themes. Lights at odd hours, faint sounds of rehearsals, glimpses of reflection in glass at night. None reported anything aggressive or frightening, only a rhythm, a habit of the house that seemed to continue beyond Schumacher's death. One neighbor summarized it bluntly. Some homes never stop working. That one still thinks someone's calling shots inside. Conclusion: what we can prove, what we cannot. What we can prove: the electrical spikes, ghost readings, and panel anomalies stemmed from decades of patchwork wiring. Motion events captured by cameras at odd hours aligned with passing headlights and wildlife outside. The knocking and scraping sounds could be replicated through normal means: closet panel resonance, dragging of the wardrobe box. What remains unclear: the perfectly synchronized clap recorded at 2:24 a.m. on multiple devices, during a total power shutdown. The faint exhale that followed, human in rhythm, caught only on the mezzanine recorder. The wardrobe box's slow relocation, consistent and directional, even with all entry points sealed. The case of Joel Schumacher's former home never produced a headline-making revelation, nor did it collapse neatly under the weight of rational explanation. What it offered instead was something quieter and more unsettling. The sense that a house could retain rhythm, like film stock running long after the director has called cut. In the end, the investigation closed without a definitive claim. Some believed they had exposed nothing more than faulty wiring and the quirks of an aging hillside property. Others, however, walked away with a different impression: that in the still hours past midnight, Schumacher's house carried on as it always had, holding rehearsals with no audience, whispering again into empty rooms, and leaving anyone who stayed there with the uneasy conviction that not everything had been explained. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.